beings, fellow human beings, and possibly pets that happen to be watching this evening. Thank you for tuning into yet another episode of The Roots Matter, the show where we talk about news and politics from a skeptical humanist point of view, which happens to be hosted by a Black woman such as myself. And it is February 1st, and I'd just like to welcome everybody. Not just, oh, I did that already. I just like to say to everyone, happy happy Black History Month. The history month that we talk about, Black history, which is American history. So don't let anybody else tell you that it's not, okay? And I know that I have Joe I cannot talk today, guys, my bad. I have today Joe, the Kentucky Atheist, that's going to be joining me later on. And I am very excited to have him on. We're going to have a very great conversation about atheist activism and also how it shows up in these here streets when everything and anything is also on fire. So I'd like to welcome you guys again. It's been a week. It's been a time. Um, I know for myself, like it was a little bit difficult to try to even create content because of all the news that has been happening, but we're here now. So when you happen to see yourself here, please make sure you guys like this video, share it on your social media platforms. If you're not a subscriber, make sure that you subscribe. And also, if you really appreciate the content that I make, the content that comes out on The Roots Matter, please consider becoming a patron. You can do that at patreon.com/camglamming. So, got that out of the way rather. So, I have another Cynthia's Corner for you, just to give you a summation of all that's going on. Where do we go
Hello,
from
everyone, and welcome to Cynthia's Corner. Not because I don't have words. Believe me, I always do. But because the weight of the headlines makes it so hard to breathe. One moment, I'm reporting on the killing of Keith Porter Jr., a father shot and killed by an off-duty ICE agent. The next, I'm reading about Renee Good, a 37-year-old mother gunned down by Immigration and Customs Enforcement in Minneapolis. And now, the death of Alex Pretty, another Minneapolis resident killed in an encounter with federal agents. A tragedy so fraught that the Department of Justice has opened a civil rights probe into his death while refusing to do the same for good. Every one of these lives should shake us awake. Every one should raise alarms. But instead, we're drowning in simultaneous crisis. And still, the government knocks on Don Lemon's door and arrests him for doing his job covering protests and speaking truth to power. Don Lemon was released after the arrest, but the very fact that a journalist can be charged under federal civil rights statutes for reporting on demonstrations is chilling. Alongside him, independent journalist Georgia Fort, out there bearing witness, also was detained. And if you think those are isolated or symbolic, look at what's happening inside ICE detention facilities themselves. Since the start of this administration, deaths in custody have climbed. Drownings, suicides, medical neglect, unexplained deaths. A record number compared to prior years. These aren't headlines because the victims were faceless immigrants. These are lives lost under the watch of a government that refuses accountability. Then there's the grotesque spectacle of the Epstein files being released. 3.5 million pages of material from the investigation into the sex trafficker who preyed on children. We're told it's the largest release of its kind, with videos, images, flight logs, financial records, and court documents. And already, there have been reports about horrific content involving victims as young as 13 by the commander-in-chief who threatens and acts to invade sovereign nations for his own enrichment. Question swirl. Who knew what when? Who protected whom? And why did it take a law for even this material to see the light of day? We already know powerful people were in Epstein's orbit. These files now in public hands should shake the foundations of every institution that claims to value justice. And yet, how will this actually change anything when the powerful shields of impunity remain intact? And through all of this, federal deaths, press arrest, horrifying files, we are left with the same age-old question that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. asked decades ago. Where do we go from here? King didn't ask that as a lament. He asked it as a challenge, a call to look squarely at the moral crisis of America and decide whether we are a nation committed to justice or resignation. King warned us that a nation that chooses racism, militarism, and materialism over humanity will ultimately self-destruct. He said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice, only if we push it that way. So when I sit down to create content, when I feel the weight pressed down, I remind myself of that question. Where do we go from here? Do we go further into fear and distraction? Do we allow the criminalization of journalists? Do we accept the deaths of people in federal custody as collateral? Do we let the grotesque spectacle of abuse and impunity distract us from demanding system-wide accountability? Or do we course correct? A nation that loses its moral compass does not just drift into ruin, it plummets. The downfall of America won't be a dramatic collapse. It will be the slow, everyday erosion of justice, accountability, and human dignity until the very idea of democracy becomes hollow. It happens quicker than people think, one compromised value at a time. We need to answer King's question not with pessimism, but with strategy. We need policies that protect lives, not target journalists. We need accountability for federal agencies that operate without transparency. We need real justice for victims of state violence, not investigations that drag on until memory fades. And we need a public that refuses to be numbed by tragedy. If we don't act, the next generation won't inherit a stronger America. They'll inherit the ruins of one. So I ask again, loudly, clearly, where do we go from here? And this time, let's build that path with urgency, clarity, and the courage to face every uncomfortable truth head on.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into our conversation today. Before I actually bring on our guest, I got a little bit of something to say about him. So today on The Roots Matter, we're joined by Joe, TKA, or the Kentucky Atheist. Joe is an atheist activist from Eastern Kentucky who uses his platform to build community by being honest about where he came from and how he survived. He is a former Christian fundamentalist and recovering addict. Joe speaks openly about deconstruction, addiction, and the damage caused by rigid beliefs themselves. His activism is grounded in live experience and lived experience, not academic distance or online posturing. Joe was also the lead organizer of the 2025 Ark Encounter protests, pushing back against religious institutions that sanitize harm while demanding cultural privilege. Everyone, please welcome Joe, the Kentucky Atheist. Hey, Joe, what do you know?
Hey,
How's
hey, thanks for
everything?
having me. You make it sound really good.
Because it is good. What can I say? Joe, I'm really happy that you are here. For those of you all don't know, Joe actually had me on his platform first, and we got a chance to talk a little bit of everything: deconstruction, religion, politics, all that other great jazz, and I had a great time. And so I was hoping that we can go ahead and basically, see if we can put lightning in a jar one more time. You good with that, Joe?
Hey, that's. I had the same thinking. We had a great conversation.
Yeah, no, it was dope. I really did appreciate it. Well, I have like a few, questions for you, if that's okay with you. Because today is the Joe
Oh
show.
yeah.
And I was even like laughing at myself. I was thinking to myself, I was like, okay, it's the first day of Black History Month, and I had the Kentucky Atheist on, so that tracks. But it's all good. Joe's
Well,
now.
you know.
No, Joe, you're cool. You're good. You're invited to the cookout. Just whatever you do, do not come to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
cookout. Just don't come to the cookout with a potato salad filled with raisins, and then you good. Okay.
Yeah, no worries.
Appreciate it. So let's go ahead and get into the combo, shall we? So first, for people who may not be familiar with you, I know that I gave like an introduction, but I would love for you to take that and expand and just talk a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, so I grew up in Eastern Kentucky in a rural area, and most of the population here is Southern Baptist with a Christian fundamentalist flavor to it too. And so growing up, of course, I went through the indoctrination of that, and everybody that believed the same things that I was taught. And I grew up in the church. My parents went to church. We prayed before dinner. The whole thing.
Mm.
The As I got older, I started asking questions and stuff, and eventually I went to college. And when I went to college, I started learning some things that contradicted what I believed, and that piqued my curiosity to look into those things more. Not so much uh, to deny my belief, but to confirm the things that I thought were true. And I found out they weren't. And it ended up being this whole series of rabbit holes where I wanted to learn as much as I can about the world around us and how it actually works. And so I spent a lot of time doing that. And at some point around 25, said I was an atheist.
Mm.
And through the course of like since I was, I don't know, 15 years old, I had started using drugs, opiates mainly. So I had a whole active addiction going on for about 20 years during that I ended up being strung out on heroin and everything. And I eventually got clean from that. And I have to say that I think that changing my view of how I looked at the world and things was very instrumental in that, and a big part of it.
So, would you say that you drew some self strength, or I guess I should ask more, your when you were going through your addiction, and you said that it took like 20 years. Well, I guess I need to understand. Were you still a Christian at that time or no?
During part of it, yeah, it was about half and half.
Okay, gotcha. So so how did you draw strength, or how did you kind of like, find like a thorough road after you came to the conclusion that, the supernatural is not real, God is not real, et cetera, to really find yourself on the other side? I would love to hear about that.
So due to the lifestyle that I lived, I spent time in jail, in prison. I I lived a life that, and I realized this that most people don't experience those things, and they have no idea about what it is to live that life, or to even have to start over a dozen times with nothing, and people who had no idea what it was like to not be able to pay for electric or water or something for a period of time, and uh, just they didn't have any idea of the perspective I held, and that always that I realized that difference between me and especially people in the church. And whenever I spoke up about that, because that's just who I am, it was not a popular opinion. And so for a while, I found myself, distanced from a lot of that anyway. So that actually made it easier. And then I was in school. I was going to Ohio University at the time, and I really focused on education and learning things. And as I learned things, the first thing that I came to mind was, oh, I learned this stuff. I need to tell other people this, because this will change their minds too. And that was a crazy thought. That's not how any of this works. And but I was in jail, and I'd already, decided that I didn't believe the story in the Bible. And there was a nun that came and brought me a book, and it was called A Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. And that book discussed a lot of the creation stories of different cultures around the world throughout history. And at that moment, I was like, well, all of these can't be right, but they can certainly all be wrong, because they're just made up stories by men, and adopted from other stories and plagiarized most of the time. And it just, at that point, I was like, it's just all nonsense. And once I seen the absurdity of it, there was really no turning back.
That's so interesting that it's funny when I listen to people when they, kind of start, because like I was going to say when they kind of start deconstructing, and the reason why I say start after they say this makes no sense to me, I'm an atheist, that, well, one, I say start because deconstruction is lifelong. I don't necessarily think that we ever get to the point where we self-actualize and real and just like arrive all the way to I'm completely over my religious trauma, time period, right? And there's always something that comes up to that shows that, hey, maybe we need to do a little bit more work. But what's interesting to find is this common thread with people once they are on that side of this is absurd. And a lot of times it's because they can't really rectify reading, spiritual literature with reality. Is that something that you say that was your experience, or was it something else?
What was the last sentence? What was I heard everything up to the question you asked.
When I was asking, like, the 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 common thread is actually reading like spiritual or spiritual literature or the Bible or whatever, and then saying like this doesn't really fit with reality. Was that something that you kind of came to the conclusion, or was it something else?
Yeah. So I think I understood what you were asking that time. It was it was a process for sure. There was never like where I just changed my mind on the spot. I think we've got a delay. I hope I'm not talking over you.
No, we do definitely have a delay. So I'm taking my time asking questions and just waiting. But, yeah, we have one, but we'll work through it. That's what happens when people go live, Joe, you know? So It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's I tell you that I think I said this on your last on your last feed. Okay, I'm want to wait for you to come back. Well, I'll just talk until you come back. Um because I know you're there. Um I remember saying like when I um came to the realization that I was angry. I'm not angry, an atheist is because I could not I couldn't like default back to some of my old practices that I had that made me feel better, like praying, meditating, things of that nature. I, and I remember being in my bedroom about to start my meditation practice or chanting because at the time I was a Buddhist, and I just started to cry, and I started to cry because I realized that like this, what am I doing? Who am I praying to? Why am I even bothering doing this? It's for naught, because whatever I'm trying to get to is not there. I'm talking to the wind in some cases, and that scared me. That really did scare me because I mean I wasn't like in the fundamentalist church very long. um and I would say that it was when I was Christian and I got saved that I was in like a church, what they call like a holiness church, came out of like a Pentecostal tradition. And believed in speaking in tongues and running around and all that other great stuff. But um when I ended up uh leaving that church, then I started to do like a lot of searching. Once I did like a lot of searching, as I tell everybody that's out there, that's okay. When I was doing like a lot of searching and trying to find my way, I was trying to see like, okay, does this work? Does that work? Do this thing work? Does that thing work? All this other stuff. Was it really going to be something that made sense? I didn't know a lot of times where to turn. And I thought that, well, if I just leave maybe this Christianity and just try other things, that was going to be the way. Because I was still searching for a spiritual pathway, if that makes sense. And Joe's going to be back soon, guys. We're just trying to fix some bugs real quick. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk. I hope that's okay with you. But, I remember just like trying to search for something. Because I think that, a lot of us, when we are in religion, especially like if we're in a more bombastic, charismatic faith type situation, that we look for all the vibes and the feelings and the and the touches from above to actually um solidify, kind of sort of, if any of this makes sense, or if God is even there, if he's even listening. And I don't know about y'all, but when I was in the church, that I used to pray to God for everything, to the time I walked out the door, to the time I came home, just to make sure for safety. I got to pray over my food. I got to pray over all this other stuff. And if I'm in trouble, I'm really going, "Era baba shianda de da bo siara da 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 skata ya da da sta." Yes, I can still do my glossalia. I can still do glossalia on demand. You didn't know about that, but that's all good. But yeah, I remember like, doing the prayer warrior stuff, going down in the spirit, starting to like, come at them, you know, get that unction from the Holy Spirit to go ahead and go into spiritual warfare, because Satan is trying to steal my soul and I got to do all the things in order to make sure that I'm safe. And then when I came to the realization that it was for naught, it was like, what's the point? What is this? And then when I started to cry, it's because I realized it was for naught, and that all those things that I believed, all those things that I thought was holding me up, weren't there. So like, I don't know how to deal with that. I don't know. I didn't know how to deal with that. And Joe, thank you for coming back, because I was just like, ripping off at the top of my head.
I caught a good piece of it.
Okay, cool. So so
Uh,
still.
my grandmother was about Pentecostal, so
Oh, really?
I experienced a lot of those things too.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did she believe in wearing the, not cutting her hair, and wearing nothing but skirts and dresses?
Yeah, when she passed, her hair was down to her ankles, and she wore slacks. She was allowed to wear slacks, she said, for some
Oh,
reason. And
okay. Okay.
but up until she had gotten older, she wore dresses every day. Yeah.
Mm. Well, blessed be the rock that is Jesus for letting her wear slacks. You know, ain't God good?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, when you look back now, what parts of that belief system shape you the most, for better or for worse?
Uh One of the things that stuck out to me a lot is that when I was about 5 years old, I was in a Sunday school classroom, and they were teaching about Noah's Ark, and we were like coloring pictures or something. You've got the picture with all the animals sticking out of the boat. And I asked the teacher, how'd they fit all those animals on the boat? And this is Southern Baptist, mind you. So the response was, if you want to ask questions, you can burn in hell. Is that what you want? And that really stands out to me a lot, as just this is the way that kids are being taught these things to this day, and worse. That might have been not even that bad, really, compared to what some of these places do. But
Hmm.
there was always just the Southern Baptist way was to always tell you how awful you were, and that you didn't deserve to go to heaven anyway. And if you do everything the preacher man says, who at the time I thought was somebody that deserved to be put on a pedestal, was a more than just a regular person.
Mm.
And the so always being told those things and stuff. And now looking back and knowing why those things kind of stick out to me a lot, and it's those things that I aim to prevent others from having to experience if they can, or sharing our experiences of those things, and where it led us. I think there's valuable conversation in talking about those things. So I will say this though, like there is an aspect of church, where you have like community, and my family went to church together, so it was a family thing.
Mm.
And it's not all bad, and I think that's where the trick really is, because uh here we'll you get to come as a family, and we'll eat crackers and sandwiches and whatever, and hang out, and everybody's all friendly with each other. But for a couple hours a week, we got to tell you what a piece of shit you are. And
Mm.
that was kind of my experience of it. And I with the fundamentalist stuff now, though, I really see the harm in it. And I, I think it's wrong to do that to children.
Yeah, I agree. I I don't I don't want my kid to be made to believe in anything except himself. I
Right.
I I have a family that they go to church, but it's not very, it's like Catholic light, like little C Catholic. And they, do the bells and smells, and then have coffee hour, eat your donut, drink your coffee or your juice, and go home. So I don't really object to him going, especially that since that's the church that I grew up in until I, lost my mind and got saved. Um, but at the same time, there's still those lessons that are there that basically, you know, echo that sentiment of you ain't shit without God. That you still needed for God to make himself into a human being, be born of a virgin who was married, to sacrifice himself to himself in order for you, human being, who was born into sin, because that's still taught. That's a pretty standard for you to be able to even have a chance at heaven. However, if you still fall back into sin, even though that the sacrifice was sacrificed to him from self, that don't mean a damn thing if you still are sinning. So stop that, even though you are a sinner, because I told you that you are, and because of reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. My version of that story is that here we see a God having some sort of midlife crisis that only deities can understand, I suppose. And there's growing up, of course, I believed all those things were true, but after looking into what the Bible says and what various scholars have to say about it and other interpretations and other religions, um, there just doesn't seem to be any truth to it.
Mm,
It, it's a it's not even a fun story. Like, it's not even a good story.
yeah,
God is a monster. Jesus is an asshole. Uh, there's no good story there. And like you said, like, you're not shit without God. That's the whole point, right?
right.
And that's where kind of the addiction thing plays in, because being able to take accountability for my own actions and being able to cope with the world as a person, as an individual, rather than somebody who can put all their problems off onto some deity, was really helpful to me. And
Mm,
I think that viewing the world that way has been uh, so much more fruitful, for lack of a better word, than through the lens of religion. And it's not that, because I don't hold that like atheism itself is any kind of worldview. It's the
right,
lack of that religious worldview. Because
right.
when you believe a God is the creator and controls everything, you have to view everything you do and everything that happens through that lens. So I would call that some type of worldview, and it's a nasty, awful one based in blood magic and cult stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, I grew up in even though I grew up Episcopal, I went to Catholic school. And so, of course, the Catholics really believe that after the priest does his incantation over the bread and wine, that becomes the literal body and blood of Jesus Christ. So we're being taught
Yes.
cannibalism. So there's that. And I would listen to
Yeah.
some. It was kind of funny when I would listen to like some like atheist streams, like when I first was starting to explore what this whole thing is about, not believing and wanting guidance. That I would hear people do the whole blood magic type thing, or they say it's based off of blood magic and stuff like that. And I always used to say, what in the world does that mean? And then I started to think, well, didn't they teach you in Catholic school that that was the literal blood, body and blood of Jesus after, you know, the Lord be with you and also with you happens, and and you say some things on, on the night that he was betrayed, and it's a Jesus Christ took bread, and then after all that happens, the rituals that happens, and you lift up the bread, which is a wafer, and you lift up the chalice, which was basically the Holy Grail facsimile. Then now this is the body and blood, and you eat it, and you're supposed to do this in remembrance of him because he said so.
Yeah.
And yes, if anything, like I don't know if your church, well, you was raised Southern Baptist. I don't know if they ever talked about witchcraft, like in like some really deep, Pentecostal charismatic
Oh
type
yeah.
churches. Oh, you did? Oh, okay, cool. So I mean, like, like how they used to demonize like witches, and every 2 seconds somebody's a witch and shit. And I'm like, if you really think about it, this is kind of witchcraft. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a whole lot of projection.
Yeah, there's that. Insert Greg Locke here. So I wanted to ask you because, like,
Yeah.
I know that I went through this, and I know I often talk about how Christianity, especially, is so ingrained and entrenched, especially in Black folk, that we have made our identity our belief system. And if you don't identify with that belief system, not everybody say it, but there is a swath of people who would tell me that since I'm an atheist, that, I'm not Black, even though I go and I look in the mirror every day and I look Black to me, but I guess that's, um, that's just like, semantics. Regardless, I'm curious to know from you if you went through any type of identity crisis after you no longer, identified as a Christian.
It wasn't so much an identity crisis for me as the just being looked down upon by everyone around, because it's a very religious area, and saying the things that I say is not popular in where I live. And so there was really just a lot of I was told that atheists are devil worshippers, which doesn't
Right.
even make sense, but okay.
Sure. Let's go with
The
that.
you know the thing is that what they still don't understand whenever I have conversations with Christians of any flavor is that it's not a choice for me to believe what you're claiming. Like, I'm not convinced what you're saying is true because I can show the contradictions and the absurdity and the awful things about it. And if you're going to insist that I take up your presupposition and say that there are deities and the Bible is true, then to me it still looks more like that Yahweh was actually the devil, which is I know a kind of like sounds like a strange position, but when you start reading about what the devil is and who he is and what he's capable of and all those things in the Bible, then if you're going to insist, then I think that your religion's evil at that point. Like, so that doesn't get me any closer, even if I try to take on those beliefs. So it's not something where I can just say, okay, I'm going to go back to doing that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't get that or understand that. And sometimes, especially in the South, in Kentucky, our education system is beyond broken. And so to put it lightly, there's a lot of ignorance involved with everything, and not in a derogatory way. Just people just don't know very much, and they don't ask questions, and so the kind of go-to is then an emotional response, and they're not real friendly about people like me doing what I do. The go-to reaction is usually anger, which
Mm.
it's okay. I'm used to dealing with that. It's something that I've dealt with, so I kind of know how to handle it. But um, it wasn't so much an identity crisis as just like uh, a shunning. And then the people that didn't do that were just like they treated me like I was strange or something. And I think they're the fucking weird ones. So
Don't tell them that. You the weird one. So I
yeah,
want
yeah.
to so I want to switch a bit because like I really want to get into your activism because like in actuality like you could have just said okay I'm I'm no longer a believer. I am and I'm just going to live my life as a person living in Kentucky and keep it going, right? But you chose a different route. And I wanted to know what made you actually enter into the world of activism.
Um, I think having children was a big part of it. I remember what it was like for me growing up and how uh, the things I was told and how I learned those things, and I don't want those things taught to my children. And so I feel like that I may not have a series of degrees and all those things to come and teach everybody anything, but I just felt the need to say something. And I feel like that more people should be saying something, and that's really the foundation of all of it. I want to show people that me as just some dude in Eastern Kentucky can create a YouTube channel that's at least moderately successful in this space, and I can do things that you wouldn't expect just because I want to. And for other people that want to speak up and say something about the harmful things that they grew up in and that children are exposed to every day, then they absolutely should. And I hope to use my platform to get more people to use their voice.
Mm-hmm. The the other thing that I noticed about your platform, and of course, like, something you told me as well when I first came on, is that you're not afraid to, I mean, like, because, like, okay, here's the thing. We know that most atheist content are, basically arguing about why, you know, the claim of like a deity being real. And
Yeah.
and then we go into the whole thing about people debating one another and obviously and then also there's who is like using fallacies and who is really good at calling out what fallacy that person used at that particular moment in time and and I know that these are arguments that human beings have been having for tens of thousands of years, but i I think that there's some value in that as far as like having those conversations because like those conversations are not necessarily for the two people or more that are engaged in it. It's more for the people who are looking to actually listen and figure out who's more convincing and also trying to get like some questions answered. It's especially like if they came from a background like yours, being like church was like we went to church as a family. We prayed, we believed, we did all this stuff. And now I'm on the other side of the argument. And and I know that there's other people who may had a longer time to kind of come out of where they were and they still have questions. So of course they're going to be listen to people who may be in that lifestyle a little bit longer, and engage in people who call themselves, scholars, people who have studied the Bible, people who have, you know, even said that they have a personal relationship or what have you, or whatever that means, in order for them to, come up with counter arguments. So, yeah, there's value in that. But what happens next? What happens after the
So
whole
the way
thing
that
commitments? Yes, please go ahead.
um, the perspective that I have on that is that you have a population of atheists on this little corner in YouTube that like to watch debates and old men yell at people on the phone, and they that's fine. There's you can learn a lot from those interactions, and you do learn how to communicate your position a lot through that. And I've done debates. I've debated Kent Hovind twice, and a number of other creationists and things. And I've done it kind of for fun, and it's also it's the game we play. When I go on, whether I'm talking to an atheist or whoever, there's people that see what I do and come and push back against it. And I've always said that I'm open to having an honest conversation with anybody that's capable of doing that. So I do end up engaging in some of that, but I also think that there's a large portion of this community that is past that, that has that understands the debates and understands the problems with all religions and gods in general, and that is more interested in the atheist community itself. So I've kind of taken a focus on that instead of just debunking things. I mean, if first of all, I don't think that we owe Christians an explanations. I think they owe me an explanation. Um, and so I, with kind of that thought in mind, I don't really care about doing the debates and stuff. But if I was going to sit down and debunk something, or teach one of these creationists evolution, Aaron Ra or somebody can do that better than me. Um, there are people with expertise in fields that are capable of showing exactly why these people are wrong, and the atheist community consumes those things. So, what do we talk about after that? And so that's kind of I'm kind of more on the implications, and then uh, normalizing atheist community itself. I would love to be able to go other places and help to set up groups for like isolated atheists and stuff, because um, when I named my channel the Kentucky Atheist, it was kind of a joke, as if like I'm the Kentucky Atheist, the only one, because there's so few of us here. But through my channel, I've met dozens of atheists from Kentucky, and we've been able to connect. And that Ark Encounter protest we did, lots of us came together from there and from the rest of this continent. So there's just more to it than arguing with Christians or trying to teach them science that they're not interested in hearing.
Right.
And I like to talk about the lives of atheists with them, and just like the conversation we're having here, uh, what they do other than just sit and defend themselves for being an atheist, which they shouldn't have to do anyway.
Yeah.
So I try to have conversations without even thinking about Christians.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, even though, like, the content that I mean, even like I started, even in my YouTube journey, being on, like, atheist leaning shows, I always ended up talking more about history and politics anyway. And and a lot of it is because, like, I'm familiar with the arguments and I know why I came to where I am at, right? But I can always point, like you said, that out to somebody else who may be more learned about subjects, when it comes to the conversations that atheists have with theists, better than myself. And but I I lean on more so the things that I know. And I also understand that the intersection of religion and politics is like very, very real. And I'm more
Oh yeah.
interested in how do we really get to the other side where we can separate that, only because we see the harm that it has caused, and we have seen the harm that it has caused for centuries. You know, and I guess that's what I appreciate more so
Yeah.
about you is like, like, yes, like, you you've done the debates, you talked to Ken Hovind, how you did it, bless you, you and Mandiza. I couldn't do it. I think about the first 5 minutes because I mean, well, that Ken Hovind has the same shtick. Same. I mean, he may change out a few slides here and there, but he is very scripted about the things that he says, and
Yeah.
he always,
Yeah.
puts these insinuations on people who don't believe. They are, I hear, and
Mm.
I hear a lot of that from presuppositions anyway. Well, the atheist worldview is this, and the atheist worldview is that, and because you are the resident atheist that are sitting in that chair that's opposite from him, then obviously you have that worldview. And I'm like, my dude, when did you get into my head? When did I have a door that was open for you to walk into my brain, for you to read it so that you know exactly what my worldview is without me actually communicating it to you? You know, and there's the rub, because that's exactly what has happened, especially in the political space, where we are getting people who happen to lean on to this, like, some of these, religious fundamentals, and inject it into law. And that's the part that really is concerning to me. How I don't Tell me how you feel about that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100% on that. And because of that, about 90% of my channel is political stuff now. The part of talking to the atheist community is recognizing the largest threats to speaking up about these things, and the MAGA and Christian fundamentalist movement are the biggest threats to that now. And so uh, they think that everybody should have free speech as long as you agree, and that's not free speech. And so I very much have had to venture into the political space, and like I said, most everything I do. I mean, I do a show called Politicality on Thursdays that now we're getting ready to expand to a second day of the week, and I'm making multiple recorded videos about too, because it is the thing that is happening to us. And what you said about the Christian tells you what you think and stuff. That's back to even whenever they're trying to stand in your shoes, they cannot help but view the world through that Christian lens. And so they can't fathom that you actually don't do that too. And so they really can't understand at all that there's people that don't, like they think you're lying about being an atheist half the time. And uh they will tell you, like all these things. And that's why people like Kent Hovind and these other people who debate in this space, every debate is about evolution. I didn't debate Kent Hovind about evolution, by the way, but um he called evolution and atheism a religion is the first debate I had with him. And then I debated the origin of the universe with him, which was a different thing. But the they're just unable to even see it that way, because they cannot look at it without thinking that they already have a book that tells them the answer to every question that could ever be asked. And because they hold that position, they're not able to expand past it. So it's a very closed-minded look at everything. And sometimes it's it's sad, but as they've gotten power, we see what they want to do. They want to stamp out the LGBTQ community completely.
Yeah.
They want to take anybody's rights who doesn't agree with them, and they want a national religion to be Christianity that everybody has to speak respectfully of.
Hmm. Yeah. I I'm pretty sure that you're familiar, and everybody who's in the chat. Hey, chat, y'all keep talking. By the by, um, the journalists Don Lemon and Georgia Fort were arrested. They were released, but I remember specifically the 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 DOJ getting on televisiones and saying that the moment that you go into a house of worship and interrupt the service, the worship, the worship service, that you are a target and we are coming out. We are coming after you. Um, that's about around about what she said. And of course,
Yeah.
when you like look at the charges, like the charges had nothing to do with that. I know that they were trying to pull up like some civil rights clauses, and I found it laughable specifically for them, specifically for Don Lemon, that they were pulling up the what is it? They were trying to, I guess, use like the KKK Act against against him for
Okay.
for actually interviewing people. And I'm just thinking like you're gonna use the KKK Act with a black man. That tracks. Regardless, the part of her getting on national television, international television, because like people can see this, and then of course like it's going to be on the internet, and the internet is forever. You are basically targeting people, or you're saying that we are targeting you if you have any semblance that you are going to interrupt our sacred time period of worship service. That that really bothered me, because the first amendment of the Constitution, which they have just basically thrown out, Constitution schmonstitution, who gives a care about that, is
Hmm.
the freedom of speech. And it is also and it also says that Congress shall make no law basically to create, or or to surround itself when it comes to religion. And when Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to some preachers who happened to be Baptists who were concerned about that, he was basically saying that the First Amendment is building a wall, or raising a wall between church and state separation. So and it will behoove us to remember that that's what it's supposed to mean, and that's how the Supreme Court has always interpreted ever since that they had um cases in the past that have come before them where the church state separation was challenged. That's how they said this is what it is. But now we're seeing that the wall is becoming quite gelatinous, and you can kind of like just like walk through it at any time that you want, to the point where some of the protections that we're supposed to have as citizens, people who are actually, or even people who actually are here, is now being eroded, because you have people who have these belief systems that they feel should be like legislated. I mean, like, basically, when I think about Christian nationalists, or I should really call them what they are, Christo fascists, that what they really want is Levitical law, which is basically the Christian version of Sharia law. And I found that more threatening than anything, because like, if anything, you say you were raised Southern Baptist, and and I think of, the Southern Baptist Church specifically, that this is the body that was formed in the 1850s because they defended slavery. And they felt that, the Baptist church did not do that much to defend slavery. So you had preachers that actually left the Baptist denomination to, form the Southern Baptist denomination, so that they can, so they can defend slavery and have slavery still exist. And I mean, like, you can read right now pages of treatises written by Baptist ministers who also served in state. They served as representatives on the state level and on the federal level, and they wrote very openly why slavery should exist, and they used the Bible to actually say that slavery should be a thing, and that it is their God-given right to actually own human beings, basically, and specifically black folk, because we are inferior because God made us that way. We are supposed to be basically the donkeys of the United States. And now we're seeing an erosion of, like, civil rights, which even, like, 45, now 47, said that he felt that civil rights was unfair to black people, was unfair to white people, I'm sorry. And
Yeah.
and that and that they are now writing executive orders to say that white people can sue, specifically white men can sue, if they feel discriminated against because of DEI. And this is the same rhetoric that a lot of those preachers from back in the day who were legislatures, you know, pushed, to the point where that's how they wanted governance to happen, you know? So I don't, so I, as much as, like, the value for argument over belief is fine, and if that's what you want to do, that's cool, but we're living in this time now, you know what I mean? And like you mentioned, you said like about 90% of your content now is, like, political, because we can't escape it. It literally rules our lives. And I know I said a mouthful right there, but if you care to comment, please do.
No, I'm glad you did. It was actually wonderful. You made a lot of really great points, and I agree with you completely. The the church, so a lot of times the pushback to what you said is that, well, Christians were the biggest in the abolitionist movement as well,
Mm,
and like that makes it better or something.
mm-mm.
But the uh, the fact is that the very books that, when we go back to those arguments we have and things, the very books that they used to support slavery are the ones that we point out to them today whenever we talk about um, God having a uh, poor moral framework. And so the 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 Christian, and especially the Christian right, has always felt like they're the ones being persecuted, and what about me? Because that's what religion does to you. The They're not all that way, and it's not all believers. I mean, it's definitely some are better than others, but I mean, they're all kind of logs on the same fire, and those numbers are what's used to say, well, see, all these people believe, so it must be true, and we must be doing what's right. And the it turns out that, like, if no gods exist, that religion is the most harmful and evil thing that man has uh, has put on fellow man, and has been used to scapegoat people, marginalize people, harm minorities. It is the bread and butter of the Bible. That's what God constantly does. these people that are different than you, go kill them. That's what they're told throughout the Bible. So it's a religion that has a history of violence because its foundation is violence.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that come back out today. And I do agree with you. The political threat in our country right now is from the Christian right and from a group of people that is currently, uh, you know, cheering on Gestapo like officers while they detain brown people and ship them out of the country before they even know who they are. And I think that historically this will be looked upon in much the same light as some of the racism of the 50s and back.
Yeah. And fun fact, the Gestapo or Hitler's Germany actually got their tactics from watching the Jim Crow South. Yeah, let that sink in. It is it is it is jarring when you think of the things that are happening to this day. And and I know that, like, you hear the word unprecedented a lot. This is
Yeah.
unprecedented, yeah, unprecedented. But I mean, like, but I don't, but I think that people kind of forget that it's it's not so unprecedented. It's not unprecedented. It's more so something that you may not have seen in real time in your life. I mean, like, I would encourage people to look at some of the documentaries where they talked about, protests that was happening during the civil rights movement, and how you had, like, um police coming out with dogs and they were being sicked on the protesters. They had hoses that were being, shot at, the people just because they were exercising their First Amendment rights. You had, people just being rounded up in jail just because they were, singing songs like "We Shall Overcome." You know, wow, what is this? No, no, this is terrorism. Get in the back of that paddy wagon. So it's basically it's the same shit but a different day. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like, and the only thing that may be just a little bit different is that the temperament of the person who's commander in chief is a little bit different. That's about it. But other than that, I mean, like, some of the same actions that we saw, from, like, 60 years ago is some of the same things that we are seeing today. So, I think that it's important to recognize these things. And I think that we even have that has, left belief and want a better future. Like you said, you had kids and that really, kind of activated you. And and I think of my kid, and I'm wondering what kind of future will he be delivered to if there's not something that happens now. And I think that, like, even if you don't necessarily have kids, I think it's still important for, us to really, utilize humanism in this particular aspect and say, what is it that, we could do in order to make a change for better. And I know that, like, um, I've been told, and and I agree that, you really can't really change people. But sometimes the the movements that you push will change the atmosphere that could possibly change people. And I think that I'm more of the mind that whatever the person that's shouting at me is saying is not the person that I'm really concerned about. What I'm more concerned about is what happens in the hollow halls of Congress, and at the what, I forgot what the president's desk is called. But, like, what
Resolute desk.
the Resolute desk. Yes, I'm more concerned about what's signed at the Resolute desk that happens to be in the Oval Office. I'm more concerned about, the rulings that will happen from the highest courts, because and I'm also concerned about the stuff that happens locally, because that affects me too. That affects all of us too. And and I think that it will behoove us to not, to not be silent at this particular point in time. uh you know that's just where my head is at. So
No, I agree
yeah,
with you 100%.
yeah. So like, I know that, we talked a little bit about you, like, help leading the 2025 Ark Encounter protest. I know that, some people from my organization, Black Non-Believers, were there. And and I know that they're supposedly doing it again this year. And am I correct?
Now I'm not planning this one this year. This is
Mm-hmm.
the 10th anniversary of the Ark Encounter opening, and Tri-State Non-Believers, the group that had done it in the past, is going to take back over this year. But this will be the last year that they do it, and they wanted to do that and stuff. And uh, I haven't really been much involved with the planning of it, just because I haven't really. There's reasons, but it's I'll probably still attend the event and be there and help out with
Mm-hmm.
some stuff, but I'm letting them do the planning and doing it the way that they want. And
Mm-hmm.
by all means, support that event, and Black non-believers that are going to be there, and the Tri-State Freethinkers, the group that puts that on, is a group of really awesome people that helped us a lot last year.
Yeah, I definitely would say, if anything, just, show up and yell at Ken Ham people, because
Yeah,
Ken Ham, that he's the same dude that does Answers in Genesis, right? I believe
yeah,
that's,
yeah. He's
yeah.
he's head of Answers in Genesis. Yeah.
Oh God, I
Yeah.
uh, so I
What?
had the displeasure of watching an episode of Answers in Genesis once. Thanks, thanks, Godless Granny. Uh, I never watched
Right.
it again.
Yeah.
And I remember, well, first off, it's hard to get over Ken Hand's lisp, and I shouldn't talk about anybody in the way that they talk, because that's bad, Cynthia, bad. But I couldn't. Secondly, I was watching a segment specifically about when he and his fellow panelists were giving their thoughts about this woman's essay that she wrote, that was entitled "God Help Me Not to Hate White People." Help me not to hate white people. And it was
Yeah.
it was released around the same time, I believe, the death, in between the deaths of Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd. And she was mostly just citing, reasons why, because of history inferences, why, one who happens to look like me would hate white people. But she knew that, because of, like, her, Christian belief system, that wasn't, a right thing to do. And so she resolved that, if regardless of, like, the history, I know that that's something that I need to, like, kind of work on. I'm paraphrasing, but you get the gist. Anyway, I I found it quite interesting that Ken Ham decided that he was going to quote Dr. King, saying that, "Oh, I thought that people were supposed to be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin." And I'm like, when you say that, it's so disingenuous, because a lot of times that line is used in a way that, they make it so, like, they try to make it so innocuous, but it's really not, because, like, you're trying to weaponize it to utilize the whole notion of trying to promote a colorblind society. But not but it but at the same time, you recognize that color is a thing, that race is a thing, that race has been baked into how we operate. I mean, like, the whole purpose of, creating a labor force that basically, built the country was because of race. And it was completely constructed. So when I hear people like him say, well, it's the content of the character, not the color of the skin, you're using that as a way for you to browbeat this woman because of what she said, instead of actually listening to the things that she did say. And so so like when I heard, about the Ark Encounter protest. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go last year. I'm hoping that I'm able to go this year. I just want to yell at Ken Ham just for using that quote out of context and saying you need to get somewhere to sit your, lispy ass down. But I digress. I want to know from you. He annoys me so much, but regardless, regardless. So I guess, like, one of the things that you were mentioning, and this is something that I'm hoping that I can do with my channel and in my area as well, is to really grow community where, people are able to gather and grow and be in places where they can be safe and they can talk the way that they want to without necessarily being um, you know, beaten metaphorically because they're not believers. So, what do you see as far as yourself in making that to be more of a thing?
So right now, I think that I'm trying to keep my goals small, things that I can pull off at the moment, and I am trying to. First, I'm working on now trying to get more local atheists together to do things and to take part in community things and stuff. And through my channel, again, I spend a lot of times not just talking about like what's in political news, but what the implications are of those things to our community and other communities, especially since this administration has targeted pretty much any marginalized or minority person.
Yeah.
So, um, I just look to continue to try and let people know that there are other people out there that feel the same way, and we're here all talking about it and just waiting on you to get here. The um, we we are seeing things like Christian fundamentalism, although 35% of adults in the United States believe that the earth was created in a single creation event less than 10,000 years ago, and that we all descended from two people, according to Pew. Um, that number is shrinking. And so we are having a difference on that. And people like Ken Ham, who have built these attractions that are meant to attract children and to misinform children. And he sets them in an auditorium and has them repeat after him that the earth is 6,000 years old and that we all came from Adam and Eve, and lots of other misinformation about the world and science. So he continues to do those things and is subsidized by Kentucky taxpayers.
That's
So I have
crazy.
a problem with that.
Hmm.
And I'll continue to push back about misrepresenting science in any capacity that I'm able to. And if something happens and my channel does really well and this thing works, I'll do more. I do what I'm capable of doing. I really have this like goal of being able to go other places and work with other groups to
Hmm.
do events and speak out against things, and whether it be protests or community building events or whatever it may be. That's really something that I want to do. It's not really realistic at the moment, so I continue to just use my platform to tell people to speak up and use their voice.
Well, I think that goes into the reason why, like, channels like yours, organizations that, are about that life need to be supported. And I understand that it's like really difficult to do stuff like that now. but it's like, but at the same time, it's the grassroots, that really can make, a difference. Like, $2 here, $3 there, $5 there, to build that into a war chest so that, yes, like, that whole thing about being able to build community, to attend protests, to speak out. I mean, to even go to Washington, to go on the Hill and make your voice, heard. Because like they bring up testimonies of regular constituents a bunch of times too. I mean, the people who were some of the first victims of ICE in Minneapolis testified in front of Congress and let them know this is what happened to them. This is what transpired as far as like their encounters with ICE and how very unpleasant it was. And to the point where we can now start having like, real conversations about, how do we deal with this, because like people are getting hurt. So, you know, I would definitely tell people, and I know that we have folk that's here. Let's let's make sure that like, people who are actually about that life and doing the work, support them. So please support the Kentucky Atheists, support Joe, you know, the atheist that's in Kentucky, East Kentucky. I know that he has a link tree that is in the show notes below, and it takes you to all his YouTube channel, which is the Kentucky Atheist. He has a shop where you can buy merchandise. You can support him on Patreon. You can support him at PayPal. And yeah, let's see about really getting that goal to being able to go to different places and really being able to help that that way to create and build communities and help communities that exist be able to build as well. So there you go. And if you want, I know that I just did like a little shilling for you, Joe, but I would love for you to give your famous last words and also, tell more about like, how people can support or see you and all that other great fun stuff.
So yeah, if you haven't seen my channel, it's not like every other channel, but at the same time, it's people talking about things that are important. You can join Lil and I on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern for my political show called Politicality. We talk a bit about what's gone on in the news for the last week and what the implications of those things are. And we we play some little games, and there's a poll up right now about Don Lemon's arrest. That's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, and you can check out all that stuff over there. But I'll be on tomorrow night with Mark Reed, though, so I'll have him on in the evening. I don't usually stream in the evenings, but I'm going to have him on because of the time difference tomorrow night. But yeah, come over and check it out. Subscribe if you like it. If you don't, tell me why. That's fine. If you want to talk to me, email me, TheKentuckyAtheist@gmail.
Nice, very nice. Yes, all the links for the Kentucky Atheist to get to him are in the show notes, so make sure you guys check that out. And thank you guys again for attending and talking in the chat, and thank you, Joe, for being here. I really do appreciate you. Appreciate
You're one of my
you.
favorite people to talk to.
Oh, I feel special and stuff. Oh my goodness. Well, guys, it great. It's good to be with people who are like minded, and not necessarily to the point where you create echo chambers, but to really be able to um, encourage one another, feed off each other, and as the Bible says, iron sharpeneth iron. So does a friend sharpeneth the countenance of another friend's face. So, you know, I still know some of my Bible verses that I can quote from here and there to make my atheist point. So, how about that? So, guys, So again, make sure that you guys subscribe to Joe's channel. Next week for February, we're actually going to be going live at 6 o'clock every Sunday, and we're going to have Black Atheist Rants on next week, who is on Facebook. I'm not necessarily Facebook, TikTok, and also YouTube. So we're going to chop it up, and I'm thinking that we're going to have like a really good conversation there. Again, everybody, please make sure that if you are new to the Roots Matter, please like this video, share it to your various platforms. Make sure that you are also subscribing, trying to get to 200. Close, I'm very close, 200 subs. I would really appreciate that. And also make sure you hit the bell for notifications. So every time that I do a live or if I put up content, you would actually get notified so that you can actually watch the videos. And also make sure that if you guys really like this content and you really want to see the channel grow and also help me out, you can always join my Patreon. You can always go to www.patreon.com/camglamming and you can join there for as little as $3, $3 a month, as my grandmother used to say to me. She's Jamaican. So, so everybody, please follow all of those things, and make sure again that you're tuning in next week. I also want to thank my crew, Infidel 64, for being able to produce the show and making sure that we are able to actually have this content up and running for your viewing pleasure and audio pleasure. And guys, just want to give you my final line before it was all said and done. Make sure you stay grounded, stay aware, stay hydrated, and remember, at the end of the day, the roots matter. Take care.